Hey everyone, this video will be breaking down the major mechanics and give some visibility into the near future with development for our dynamic Cold War campaign server. Since the launch, we have been really pleased with how people have been reacting with the server, so I hope this video will help answer a lot of questions and lay down the vision for the future. If this is your first time here, this channel focuses on multiplayer sim gameplay, so if you're into that, please subscribe. To set the stage, I would like to walk through this map to really explain how the mission works. When the mission comes up, it looks at where the active frontline is. And here we see the default starting position at the start of the campaign. Frontline units spawn in the sectors immediately to the west and east of the active frontline. There are 10 to 20 encampments, which have around 10 units or so per encampment, and this makes up the frontline troops. These troops represent 50% of the overall health from the side. 3 to 4 sectors behind the active frontline, there are front depots. These are logistical targets, and they are very important. They make up 20% of the side's health. So both frontline troops and frontline depots dynamically spawn, which means that when the frontline moves, they respawn at full health. Lastly, we have the rear depot or the industrial targets. These are super high value targets, and these are not dynamic. They are always there, and they will not be repaired within a server reset. So if you strike it in the first 10 minutes of the server coming up, they basically will remain ruined for the whole session. This is really important to note because when you think about how the frontline works, the frontline can move in 2 ways. The first is a breakthrough, and that is when a side health reaches 20%. This is the collective health of the frontline, the front depots, and the rear industrial depots. When this happens, the frontline moves 2 whole sectors. The other way is when this is every 2 hours the server checks the health of the 2 sides. If there is more than a 5% variance, then the winning side gets a sector. When the frontline moves, the old units are removed and the new ones appear. Again, the rear depots do not repair themselves. So if you knock these out, again, they represent 30% of the health. Then when the front lines move, one side will only be able to have a maximum of 70% health. So it's very, very important that you hit these targets. Now the setting of the server is early to mid-Cold War. I did a whole video breaking down the planes on the server in a very directional sense, which you can see in the above right. You can see the planes here, and I will just say at a high level that we think the Cold War setting in DCS is probably where the game shines. The planes are not overly complicated. The fights, despite having missiles, are actually still interesting, and it strikes a nice little balance between new and old. Along with that, there are a ton of great planes coming into the genre, and we plan to incorporate as many as we can. The last thing I will say is that we do have the MiG-29 and F-14 in the server, and these are quite strong in comparison to the other planes. We intend to introduce restrictions for these planes. The idea is that players who partake in the campaign, meaning destroying ground targets, will generate campaign points. Once they have killed something like 5 to 10 ground targets, then they can use those campaign points to gain access to the restricted slots. If they die in an F-14 or MiG-29, then they lose their campaign points, and then they're going to be forced to having to bomb ground targets again in order to gain access again. We also want to introduce a mechanic where no more than 10% of the plane sides can be these restricted planes. So if blue only has 10 players, then they can only have a maximum of 1 F-14 up in the air. FARPs are located throughout several sectors. If the sector immediately in front of that FARP is owned by that side, then that FARP will be active. So if you have this being red, then red can spawn on this FARP. It's very simple. There are also forward airfields. These have rules that we're trying to find our way to find the right balance, but essentially the way it works is that Su-25s and A-10As can always spawn at these airfields unless the airfield is completely captured, meaning the sector has been taken. Once a big enough buffer zone has been created, then all planes can spawn at these airfields. The main airfields are protected by a death bubble. If you fly into this death bubble, you will get popped. This is to make sure that the server is always playable. And to cut down on flight times, we will be adding in road bases to the server. These will be sprinkled into the map, just like FARPs, and this will allow people to get to the fight faster, but they will have more restricted weapons. So, there's going to be a give and take. If you fly from further back, you'll get better weapons, but if you take off from a road base, you'll get to the fight much quicker, but you'll have weapons that aren't as good. We have a huge feature on the server, which is Overlord. This is an open source project. It's a GCI bot. It's a really big selling point of the server, I think. It's a bot that can see all players, and you can talk to the bot. You can ask for radio checks, you can ask for bogey dopes, you can set tripwires, you can say Overlord admin 11 set tripwire 12 kilometers, and then she will respond and say your warnings has been set, and if anyone flies within 12 kilometers she will alert you. This is better explained in text, I think, so look at the FAQ that are linked below. You need to read this if you want to play on the server. If you do not, you're not going to be able to use Overlord, and Overlord's a key part of the server. Lastly, we have we call mini missions. We only have one on the server right now, which is an AI bomber flight. Every hour one side will get 4 bombers, and these go for the rear industrial targets. So if you ignore these, they will destroy your industrial targets, which will put your side at a disadvantage. We want to add more. We want to add some that are specific to helicopters, and to give things people to do that isn't just like airquake or just mindless ground pounding on the front. Like, we want to add different varieties of play, and to make different play styles viable, and to aid the overall campaign effort. Now that we've seen community response on the server, we feel very validated in the core concept, because we do think it works, and it is working. The server on launch day was basically full almost the whole day. Being a longtime player of the IL2 Finish server, I always felt that DCS needed a similar server, and it feels like we're on the right path. For the near future, we would like to work on restricted planes, player stats, road bases, and these mini missions that I mentioned earlier. I want to thank the server staff. They've been great, so please tell them hello when you see them. They've been putting a lot of time into it. And if you found this video helpful, please do consider subscribing, and I hope people have fun on the server. If you have any thoughts on the server or suggestions, please let us know in Discord or in the comments below. Thank you.